friends, how are you? I know what you're thinking. Every single day, I look a little more like Gem in the holograms. In the holograms? Gem and the holograms. And you would be right. Funny story, I just went to dinner with my mom earlier tonight and she was like, those glitters on your face are like really big though. And I was like, you mean the 3 very specifically big hearts that are the same and symmetrical on each side? Yeah, that was intentional. She was like, oh, I thought they were just really big. No, they weren't. Everything is about intention, friends. Everything. I'm a little scatterbrained today because I'm having a very sad day, which is hilarious. Not that I'm sad, but it's funny because I was looking at the other video that I had scheduled before this video, and I was like, I was also really sad in that video, but for completely different things, like a month apart. So I'm not just always sad, but if you need to know that it's okay to be sad, it's okay to be sad. And also, it brings me a lot of joy to be able to do this work. I love what I do so much, and I think that right now I just need to lean into something that makes me feel really, really happy. So let's do some leadership horror stories. I promise to also come to this work from emotional intelligence, even though I'm feeling my feels. So let's go back to basics and let's read a leadership horror story. If you yourself have a leadership horror story and you want to send it to me, my email is down below in the details of this video. So you can go ahead and send me your leadership horror stories and I will read them out loud. Keep them anonymous for you and comment on them. Do a little bit of commentary, you know, the gist. So get cozy, grab a snack, and let's dive into this episode of Leadership Horror Stories. So this woman I worked for, we'll call her Audrey, was introduced to me by my family member who turned out to be toxic. This family member told me for years that I should work with Audrey because of how incredible she was and how much I would learn from her. So I believed that Audrey would be a safe space when the time came to actually work together. Audrey is a self-employed consultant who teaches business, strong leadership, and team building. In brackets, it says, LMAO, the irony. Let me just pause it right there. I'm already gonna get into this. If you are hiring someone for leadership abilities, okay, leadership, team building, maybe they're doing a workshop or facilitators, one of the best pieces of advice that I ever learned from Katie Kurtz, she's a trauma-informed specialist. Trust is never assumed because you're in a position of power. That is everything. So I'm going to say it again. Trust is never assumed because you're in a position of power. When I think of people who are hiring out coaches, consultants, facilitators, workshop hosts, people who are coming to speak at your event, vet them. Look at their stuff, look at how they govern themselves, because that'll tell you way more than the really fancy bio that they have or the letters before it and after their name. And I know a lot of times it's like, oh, do what I say, not what I do, right? But if you are someone who's saying, I believe so strongly in this work, you have to be a walking embodiment of the work that you teach. Or else there is something fraudulent going on, because then it would be like, okay, well, you believe in this work, so why aren't you doing it? Hi friends, it's Danny from the future. It is editing Danny. And I just wanted to say that sometimes, like, let people earn your trust over time, because sometimes you think that they're amazing and fabulous and you put them up on a pedestal, and then this happens where they show their true colors. So if that happens, don't get down on yourself that you didn't do a good enough job to figure out if this person was right for you. Just recognize that, like, sometimes people don't show who they really are until they show you who they really are. Anyways, that's all. Back to this. And there's something about like learning something intellectually, but then actually living it and living it through hurdles of life that gives you a deeper understanding in what you're teaching. Definitely check people out, see how they govern themselves. Look at what they're doing, look at how they're acting, look at how they're behaving, even in like a sales or prospective conversation, because that is going to be a reflection of what it's going to be like to work with them. Okay, I was her assistant and was showered with gifts and gratitude for joining her team. The first 3 weeks of working together were great. A little intense, as she believed I should be on demand basically all the time and always ready to answer her calls and messages. But I considered myself to be up for the lifestyle. I genuinely thought I would spend the next 20 years of my life working with her and was so excited for the opportunity. She told me often how much she appreciated my organization and how well I was doing in the role and how much easier I was making her life. It was wonderful. And then she was on vacation and I was in the process of moving in with my partner when the flip switched into a literal hell. I love how this email, I'm not going to show you the email, but I love how it's like split up because I'm definitely reading it how it's written and it makes me really happy. Backstory. Audrey took 6-week, maybe 6-month course on building funnels for her biz and then threw the task of building the funnels to me, someone who had worked for her for a few weeks with zero funnel knowledge aside from watching a few recordings she had sent me from her course. Monday morning, I sent her my day's agenda for what I was working on. She asked about the tasks that were not on my radar. When I told her I genuinely had no idea I was expected to deliver such items, she told me that was impossible. She said it was mentioned to me on a recorded Zoom meeting, to which I profusely apologized and asked for her to send me the recording so I could realign. And I asked her to connect with me over the phone to further clarify what was expected of me. She said no to connecting over the phone. She agreed to send me the recording, did not do that, and then yelled at me that the recording could be found in her course modules. I spent 8 hours in tears that day. Okay, pause. As someone who's in a space of leadership, if you are in a space of leadership, if you're listening to this call, or you know someone who's in a space of leadership, questions are not evil. Questions are not bad. Questions are clarification. I talk about this all the time, but oftentimes people think that people who ask questions, they're irritated at them, right? Or like that questions are like a sign of not knowing what you're doing. I call bullshit. I just got an email. Was it from this person? I think the questions are an indication that you do know what you're doing and you're asking to clarify because you do know what you're doing. But normally people think that over communication is over communication. It's not. It's oftentimes anything that's not over communication is under communication. The human error that often happens is from under communication. It's from saying, well, I assumed that you would know. We all have different lived experience, learning styles, nuances to our life, different skill sets, different understandings, and different time experience in our lives. So assuming that someone knows something without actively being like, hey, are we on the same page, is negligent on the leader's part. So if you have questions coming to you, the kindest and most professional thing you can do is answer those questions. Because the deliverables were behind, she blamed me for costing her $3,000, and I was embarrassing her company for having to reschedule a meeting due to lateness. If you have a team that's doing something for you, it is your job to make sure that they're supported in doing that for you. She only agreed to talk to me over Slack messages. When I told her that I believed this was all a miscommunication that can be resolved better with over the phone communication, I was told, I have absolutely no problem with communication, and no, we can't connect over the phone. I am not the problem here, and no, I will not connect with you more than once on a project that you should have had full awareness of handling. Once I tell you to do something, it's out of my head, onto your plate, and solely your responsibility. If you're going to set boundaries like that, you need to make sure that that other person is supported in that boundary setting. So if you are paying someone and if you are the leader of someone, you need to make sure if you're going to set a boundary, like I'm not going to talk to you over the phone and I'm only going to communicate with you once on a project. I would honestly, if I was in that position and that was kind of how I ran things or how I worked, if I'm going to implement that boundary, how am I going to support that person? So I would say, hey, I'm not available to talk over the phone. I would get curious about, okay, what do you think? What do you believe the miscommunication was? What do you think I could have communicated better on my end? Is there anything you needed from me to support you? And this is not groveling. This is ownership over our actions, behaviors, and the nuances of our experience, right? And this is why I teach iconic leadership. And that's why that ownership model is so important, because as a leader, you are leading not only yourself, but you're leading the team. So if there's a miscommunication, it's okay to get curious. That doesn't take away from your sense of expertise or whatever in what you do. If anything, it shows that you know yourself and you're confident enough to admit your mistakes and learn from them. She also blamed me for missing a meeting that she had weekly for months because of a time change, and told me that I had to manually adjust each meeting in her calendar from Mountain Standard Time to Eastern Standard Time and send these updated times to her in an email, refusing to click a few buttons in Google Calendar to have this done for her automatically. A week later, she finally agreed to get on the phone with me. I compiled a very well thought out professional blurb about how I was incredibly upset and affected by the events that took place, which good for you. That's really hard to stick up for yourself like that and share how you're feeling. So good for you. That advocating for yourself is amazing. They don't know unless you tell them, and you told them. She told me,
never read anything like that to a manager ever again. You should be thanking me for the opportunities I'm giving you.
The phone call went on for 2 hours and consisted of her yelling and swearing at me while I mostly sat in silence, baffled. These are just the main points. There are so many little events that took place daily throughout this nightmare. The bullying went on for 10 days straight until I sent a snarky message essentially telling her to go F herself and quit the same time she fired me. LOL. I mean, at least it was mutual. The best part, when I told my toxic family member about what happened, she said, oh yeah, I knew she was like that. Yikes. So yeah, that's my leadership horror story. Can't wait to hear your perspective. With love. And then she said her name. So yeah, geez, yikes, yikes, yikes. Obviously, when we're reading this, we don't know everyone's point, or we don't know the perspective of the person who is the leader. This is like one experience and story. So what I would say is this sounds like someone who might not have been ready to take on an assistant or might not have been ready to lead themselves. They might be really good at teaching it, but they might not be really good at doing it for themselves, which we see a lot of the times, unfortunately, in a lot of different industries. It's easier to teach things than to like live it and stand by it and make sure that it is a daily part of your routine and regime, right? That's one of the reasons why I created Iconic Leadership, was mainly for me, so that I could be like, okay, when I look at how I'm behaving, am I leading in integrity with my value system? Am I communicating effectively? Am I taking ownership over my actions, behaviors, and my energy? Am I understanding and compassionate towards my nuances of my life experience, but also the nuances of the person who I'm interacting with? What is my intention behind what I'm doing and why I'm doing it? And am I honoring consent and capacity in this? I'm happy I read that story. So maybe if you've ever had that experience before, you can be like, I've been there, I've done that. And if you want to binge more leadership content, you can go to the Leadership Horror Stories playlist, which is either going to be here or here. I'll put a little clicky thing for you. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. You guys are fabulous. Kick-ass, take names, change the world. You are freaking fabulous, as said. Stop being so secretive about it. And I hope you have a fabulous rest of your day, night, and life. Yeah. Okay. See you in the next video. Bye, guys.